Hey there, Faerie fans, and welcome to the first episode of Faerie Fridays, where I, Amy the Fairy of CKDS and nothing else, linked below, will tell you guys about the old myths and fairy tales. So, since Frozen is still amazingly popular, Elsa even going as far as making an appearance in the upcoming season of Once Upon a Time, and because Neff won't let me say a word about it on the podcast, this first episode will be all about the Ice Queen. Actually, no, not her. Her. The beautiful yet cruel ruler of the winters in Denmark.
Woohoo! Big summer blowout.
So here's how the story goes. There's a legend that once upon a time, a beautiful fairy, the Snow Queen, lived on a mountain in the highest most parts of the Alps, the most solitary peak. The mountain folk and the shepherds all climbed up to the summits to admire her, and everyone fell head over heels in love. Every man would have given anything, including his life, to marry her, and indeed that's exactly what they gave. For fate had decided that no mortal would ever marry the Snow Queen.
We'll lock the gates. We'll reduce the staff. We will limit her contact with people.
But, in spite of that, many brave souls did their best to approach her, hoping always to persuade her. Each suitor was allowed to enter the great ice palace with the crystal roof and where the queen's throne stood, but the second he declared his love for her and asked for her hand, thousands of goblins appeared to grasp him and push him over the rocks. Found dead flat. Without the slightest of emotion, the queen would watch the scene, her heart of ice, unable to feel anything at all.
Conceal, don't feel, don't let them know.
The legend of the Crystal Palace and the beautiful, heartless queen spread as far as the most distant alpine valley.
Beautiful, powerful, dangerous.
A fearless champion hunter. He was fascinated by the tale, and he decided to set out and try his luck. Leaving the valley, he journeyed for days on end, climbing the highest snow-clad mountains, and he scaled ice-bound peaks, defying all the bitter cold, the winds that just swept through the whole mountain areas. More than once, he felt all was lost, but the thought of her beauty and her power gave him the strength, and he kept moving on. At last, after many days climbing, he saw the glistening castle in the sunshine and the tall, transparent spires of the ice palace. He summoned his courage, this young man, and he entered the throne room. But he was struck by the Snow Queen. Her beauty was just too dazzling, and he couldn't say a word. Shy and timid, he did not dare to speak, but he knelt, admiring her, for just hours on end, without opening his mouth. The queen looked at him silently, thinking all the while that, provided he did not ask her hand in marriage, there was no need to call the goblins. Then, to her great surprise, she discovered that his behavior had touched her heart. She realized she was becoming quite fond of this hunter. Much younger and more handsome than all the suitors before. Time had passed. The Snow Queen dared not admit, not even to herself, that she would actually like to marry this guy.
You can't marry a man you just met.
In the meantime, the goblins kept watch over her, and for the first time, they were astonished. Then they became more and more upset, for they rightly feared their queen might be on the point of breaking the law and bringing down on the heads of all the mountain people. The fury of the fates, seeing that the Snow Queen was slow to give the order to get rid of her suitor, the goblins took it upon themselves to take care of the problem. Once night fell, they slipped out of the cracks and the rocks and clustered around the young man and they hurled him out of the palace and into the abyss. The Snow Queen watched the whole scene from the window, but there was nothing she could do. However, her icy heart did melt, and the beautiful, cruel fairy suddenly became a woman.
Act of true love will thaw a frozen heart.
A tear dropped from her eye, and the first tear that she shed became the Edelweiss, the flowers that grow in the Alps. From there, we get into the more well-known story by Hans Christian Andersen, which is crazy long, so I'm not going to tell the whole story like I did with that last one. So, a troll decides to make a magic mirror, which would amplify all the bad in life. And he tried to send it up to heaven to make fools of the angels, but on the way up, it shattered into thousands of pieces and rained down on Earth. If a shatter got into your eye, you would only see the bad in life, and if it got into your heart, it would freeze your heart into a block of solid ice. Later on, a little boy got a shard into his eye, and the Ice Queen just happened to find the little boy playing in the snow one day and decided to take him home. She's always wanted a kid. Missing her friend, the next-door neighbor of this little boy goes on to this long, drawn-out quest to find him. Then once she reaches the palace, the boy is in the middle of a frozen lake under the Queen's spell, which is not allowing him to move from this lake until he can spell the word eternity with a piece of ice onto the frozen lake. Her true love for him breaks the spell and melts the shard of mirror in his eye.
Love will thaw.
And we also go into the fan theory of the trolls being the cause of Hans to become so cruel to Anna.
Oh, Anna. If only there was someone out there who loved you.
Maybe they put a shard of a mirror into his eyes while we weren't looking. So, spoiler alert, guys. This is quite possibly going to be the only real happy ending you'll ever hear out of me on this show. A lot of fairy tales are really, truly messed up.